Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Willow Cove Crafts, where I talk about knitting and sewing and my other crafty endeavors. My name is Emily, and you can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and now TikTok as Willow Cove Crafts. Today is Sunday, June 5th, 2022, and I am coming to you from just outside of Madison in Verona, Wisconsin. As it is the first Sunday of the month, it is time for my next edition of my monthly makes series, where I talk about everything I worked on during the previous month, which for this episode is May 2022. So let's get into it. I think I'm gonna start, I'll do finished objects, works in progress, and then I'll do a little life update at the end for those of you that are interested. This past month, I finished one item, and this is going to be impossible to show you, but I have finished my Magnolia dress by Deer & Doe. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about this because I did publish a full video on it. I'll link it below if you're interested, but last week I did a very in-depth overview of this project, including like me wearing it, styling it, all the modifications I made. So if you're interested in hearing more information about this finished dress, I would definitely recommend going to check out that video. But yes, like I said, this is the Deer & Doe Magnolia dress pattern, and I sewed it out of a black floral that I purchased from Mercerie, which is an online fabric shop. And yes, I had a lot to say about this dress, so definitely go check out that video if you are interested in hearing more. Yeah, I feel a little bit, I don't know, sluggish that I only finished one object this month, and it was a sewing object. But this dress actually there's a lot of sewing, a lot of seams. It's deceptively, I don't want to say complicated because making it was not complicated, but there are a lot of seams and a lot of pieces. And so obviously the more seams you have, the longer it takes to sew something together and to cut out all of those pieces, yada yada. So yes, I do feel like I spent a lot of time this month working on this dress, and I really wanted to get it done because I wore it to a wedding last weekend. The one thing I will say, and you know, I filmed that other video before wearing it for the wedding, and so, you know, I filmed the video and then I got a whole evening worth of wearing in, and something happened that was a little disappointing, which I will share with you because I think failures are important to call out because we all have little failures and it's important to talk about them, to know that we're not alone. But I was wearing this dress and I found that the front was gaping a little bit. You know, if I wasn't watching it and like being very mindful of it, my whole like bra would hang out the front, which is not a good look at a wedding, you know? Just like flashing everyone left and right. It was just my bra. I wasn't actually flashing anyone, but you know, I don't want that hanging out either. So I thought to myself, or you know, while that was happening, or like after I wore it a little bit, I noticed that that was happening. I decided to safety pin it, because that was kind of my only option at that moment. And I knew that safety pinning it was a bad idea because, you know, this is a very fine fabric. I had to use specific thread with it. I had to switch out the needle on my sewing machine to be more fine. And the safety pin was like shoving a crowbar through the fabric. It was like just too thick of a needle to use on this fabric. And like, I knew that, but I did it anyways. And I don't think you would ever notice unless I pointed it out to you, which I'm going to do. But let me find the spot. Let me take this off the hanger and find the spot. It snagged my fabric and it was so upsetting. Where did it go? I'm having trouble finding it, so maybe that's a good sign. Here it is. I don't know if you can see that. Right here is a snag, and then there's another little snag right next to it, maybe like holding it up like this. You can see it better. I'll hold it against my face. It snagged the fabric, and then there's another spot where the safety pin, I think, maybe actually ripped the fabric a little bit. I don't know. You're probably never going to be able to see that on the screen right here. So yes, within like a half an hour of wearing this, I was like, I've ripped my fabric. My fresh new dress. I don't think it's ruined. I don't want to cut the snag because that, I think, is what will actually interfere with the structural integrity of the dress. I have seen tutorials, I'm gonna have to go watch them again, where you just like can kind of pull that snag to the back of the fabric so you don't see it anymore. And so like the snag is still there. Again, you don't want to cut it because that is what actually makes a hole instead of a snag. And then yes, I am planning to actually go back and tack these together, you know, with thread, which will hopefully do the job of holding that front closed without actually ripping the fabric any more than it already is ripped. So anyways, I'm being very precious about it because all of a sudden this like finished object feels very fragile and, you know, maybe not the most structurally sound, which is a bit disappointing when you've, again, spent a long time working on something. This dress felt like it took forever. So moral of the story is, don't use safety pins on very fine fabric. I don't think I mentioned, but this is a viscose. So it's really drapey. It's quite thin. If I like hold it up, I don't know if you're gonna be able, it's see-through. Like I can hold it up to my face and like see the camera. It's fine when it's on because your body kind of blocks the light that would be passing through, but it is quite the delicate fabric. So yes, don't use safety pins on it. It will cause nothing but heartache. All right, let's get into works in progress. I'm gonna start with my knitting work in progress, or I have 2 knitting works in progress, and then I have 1 sewing work in progress. So I will start with knitting. My 2 knitting works in progress are the same ones that I showed last month. I am still working on them, and I want to talk about that for a minute. I have mentioned this before, I believe, but casting on new projects is my absolute favorite part of the knitting process. I get like such a thrill from casting on new projects, even more so than I get from finishing projects. Like, it is like an absolute high, I think, just like starting something new. It's like fresh and exciting. I just love it so much. It's my favorite part. And what that has gotten me over the years is just this huge pile of unfinished projects because I start something, I work on it for a little bit, and then I get bored with it, and you know, I want to cast on something new because that is what I like to do. And so I just have a huge pile of unfinished things that I would really like to finish. I'm trying to be, you know, I don't want to like label it as like good knitter versus bad knitter, but I want to finish things. And like, you know, in my dream life, I have a whole wardrobe full of beautifully knitted objects. And in order to achieve that, I have to actually finish things out. So I'm trying really hard to do that. And yes, in April it must have been, because I talked about both of these projects, or I introduced both of these projects last month. I started 2 new projects. It's kind of like the equivalent of like, I'm gonna start a diet on Monday, so I'm gonna just eat everything in sight on Sunday. It was kind of like that, where I was like, I'm gonna actually start finishing my projects, but before I commit to that, I'm gonna start 2 new projects. So that's what I did in April. I started 2 new, very large projects, and I have stuck true to that. Those are the 2 things I have been working on, and it has been tough. I am like absolutely jonesing to start something new, but I really want to finish one of these 2 things. I think having 2 knitting projects is like my absolute perfect balance. It lets me finish things and make meaningful progress on things while also giving me a little bit of variety. But when you start 2 massive knitting projects at the same time, it just ends up taking forever. And so I really don't want to start anything new or like pull something else into the rotation until I finish one of those 2 projects. And it has been tough. I have almost failed at my endeavor. There was one point this past month where I was like really wanting to work on a blanket. And I have several blanket works in progress that are just like sitting in my closet, not getting any love. But I was like, I'm gonna start a new blanket because obviously that's what I like to do. And I crocheted like one little magic loop or magic center, whatever they call it. And I was like, nope, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna go back to my 2 projects and try and finish them. And then, a half an hour later, I was like, maybe a 3rd knitting project wouldn't be so bad. I'll work on one of my current blanket projects, maybe, that felt a little bit better, like picking up an old project. And then I knit on one of my old blanket projects for like 10 minutes and I did it again. I was like, nope, I'm gonna be a good knitter and work on my 2 projects. Not to say, again, I don't want to call a good knitter or bad knitter. Different things work for different people. Some people love having massive amounts of whips. Some people are monogamous knitters. But for me, I'm trying really hard to stick to my 2 projects and not work on anything else until one of those things is done. So anyways, there was that. I contemplated starting a new sweater. I even put a poll up on Instagram to see if anyone would talk me out of it. No one did. Everyone was like, cast it on. But I didn't. So all that to say, this is a very long-winded rant. I'm working on the same 2 projects as last month. Neither of them are super close to being done. I have quite a bit of progress on them, but they still are not close to being done. And I have not cast on, again, I started both of those at the beginning of April, and it is now the beginning of June. So I have been working on these 2 knitting projects for 2 months. I haven't started anything new, and this is maybe the longest I've ever gone in my entire knitting life without casting on a new project. And it's been rough, but I'm trying to stay disciplined and committed to the things I have told myself. So yeah, I will stop ranting now and show you what I've done. My first work in progress this month is the half and half triangles wrap by Purl Soho. This is a super popular pattern. You've, I'm guessing, have probably seen it before. And without further ado, I will show you my progress. This is gonna be really hard to show you because it's massive. But the way that this pattern works, in case you haven't seen it before or you haven't knitted before, is it is a giant square and it's kind of like split along the diagonal, and half of the square is one color and half of the square is a different color. And the construction is you knit the first triangle completely, and then you do a couple little center rows, and then you do the second triangle. So since last month, and I do have a marker here to kind of show you what I've done. Where did it go? You can probably see my little macaroon here, but so this is where I was last time I did my monthly makes episode. So in the month of May, I knit the rest of my first triangle. And the first triangle is really nice because your rows get shorter. So how this works, and this is a free pattern, I am not giving anything away, but you do wrap and turns on every stitch. So, you know, every row gets one stitch shorter. So you do short rows to create a giant right triangle. So my first triangle, I was here last month and I finished up the first triangle, which was very satisfying because again, the rows got shorter and then, you know, the tip of that triangle just flew by. And then you do a couple like central rows and you start on the second triangle. And the second triangle is a huge slog because your rows get longer on the second triangle. You can just kind of keep going and picking up stitches on your center line to create your second triangle. And I have a lot to go, you know? The second triangle is going to be exactly the same size as the first, so yes. I feel like I have been working on this. Again, it's a huge project. It's massive. I knew that going in, but you know, being in the middle of it, it just kind of feels like it's never going to end. But yes, let me talk about the yarn I am using. So I'm using the yarn that is called for in the pattern, which is Purl Soho's Linen Quill. Here's the label. Here's an extra skein, or not an extra skein, but one I haven't gotten to yet. It is 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, and 15% linen. And it is a fingering weight, and I really love this yarn. I find it very complex in, you know, I guess that's due to the different fiber types that are in it, but the linen just like kind of makes these white flecks. It doesn't pick up the dye as well as the wool and alpaca does. And it just, I absolutely love this yarn. Some people do find it scratchy. I don't. It's definitely not the softest yarn in the world, but I really like it. Anyways, the colors I am using, so this is my second triangle. This is Turmeric Yellow. And my first triangle was knit out of Honey Pink. And I used 2 full skeins, and then this is what I have remaining of the third skein. So you probably, each triangle only takes about 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 balls of yarn, depending on, you know, how tight your gauge is. And Honey Pink, it never photographs correctly. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. My goodness. Honey Pink never photographs correctly. It looks kind of yellowy beige on the screen, which it is. However, if you look at it really closely, there are just like little flecks of pink. It almost seems like they dyed it like a straw yellow and then over dyed it with a really light pink. And so in certain lights, it looks yellow, and in certain lights, it looks like a really pale pink. And I think, you know, what it is paired with and what it is next to also kind of impacts the color that it looks like. And I don't know if it like really even shows up that well on camera, but I do think having the darker yellow paired with it makes it look more pink, in my opinion. But again, I don't know. I don't really feel like the camera is picking that up very well. but it's, again, this like just very pretty complex color. It looks very simple at first glance, but I think it's absolutely stunning. Yes, that honey pink is definitely in my wheelhouse, and then this like bright spicy yellow is not my normal color. Again, if you've been watching for a long time, you might know that I am a really big fan of neutrals, but I just think this is so fun. And I said this last episode, but I feel like this color combo just really reminds me of like an illustration of like a 70s sunburst. Do you know what I'm talking about? And yes, I think it looks really great together, and I'm excited to have it as a finished object. All in all, I do really like working on this project. It's a really good, you know, I do knit at work sometimes on some of my meetings, and this is all just straight garter stitch, so this has been a really great project to work on while I'm at work, just to kind of keep my hands busy during some of my meetings. And slowly but surely, it is getting towards the end. I am over halfway, so like hitting that second triangle, I will say, so like, you know, towards the end of the first triangle, I was like really getting tired of this. And then, you know, getting to that halfway point and starting the second triangle was a bit, you know, it gave me a little bit of invigoration. Is that a word? I felt invigorated to keep going. And as you can see, I didn't make it very far before getting kind of sick of it again. But I do love this project, and I'm trying really, really hard to not let it become a languishing whip and to just keep pushing forward until it is done. So hopefully, I don't know if I'll finish this month. I think it's possible depending on how much I work on it compared to my other projects, but we'll see. I'm also trying not to put too much pressure on myself to finish things by certain dates. I don't love deadline project making. Sometimes it happens, but you know, this will be done when it is done. And then I'll be able to start something new. My next work in progress is the Fisherquine jumper by Christina J. MacKenzie is the designer, I believe. It is a raglan sweater, and it is all over cabled, and while it is knit on thicker yarn, because it is cabled, it, you know, is kind of complicated and slow going. And another reason, you know, while I don't think the amount of knitting in this project is as large as the half and half triangles wrap, those cables really slow me down. Anyways, here's my sweater and here's my progress. So I have a marker here. It's a little Santa because why not? And as you can see, since last time I finished the raglan, which, you know, if you've knit a raglan sweater before or a circular yoke sweater before, you know that getting to that widest point before you split for the sleeves is a real slog sometimes. But anyways, I got to, I finished the raglan, separated the sleeves, and am now about, I don't know, 3 inches into the body. And oh, it just looks so good. I'm absolutely in love with this. Yes, I love how just like thick and juicy these cables are. They are gorgeous. Yes, let's talk about the yarn. So the pattern calls for an Aran weight yarn. What I did was I paired, and I saw someone else do this. I mentioned last episode that my inspiration for this sweater is definitely Aro from Aro Knits and Purls. She did one very similarly and I loved it immediately. But I decided to take a worsted weight yarn and pair it with a Mohair to just give it a little bit of extra like fluff and etherealness. So anyways, I am using, my worsted weight yarn is the Biches Le Gros Lambswool in the off-white colorway. And this is 100% lambswool made in the UK. So, and this is definitely a very like rustic, toothy yarn. And I am pairing that with my favorite Knitting for Olive Mohair, also in the off-white colorway. This is 70% mohair, 30% silk. It's getting a little blown out, but it is Knitting for Olive. I said this before, and I will say it again as a little plug. Knitting for Olive Mohair is my favorite because it, from what I have read, is very ethical and responsibly sourced. It's fairly affordable as far as mohair is concerned, and it comes in about a bajillion different colors. So if I need mohair, I tend to go for Knitting for Olive. So I recommend you try it if you have not. And so yeah, these two are getting paired together to make this absolutely stunning sweater. I'll hold it up for you again. I think it looks so good on camera. I am planning, so something that has kind of bothered me about this sweater from the beginning is the neckline is quite wide. It looks fine, like when I try it on, it looks good, but not great, if that makes sense. I just feel like the neckline is a little too wide for my liking. If I were to knit this again, I would definitely go down another needle size or two for the neckline ribbing. To fix it at this point, because there's, you know, really no going back at this point, I did buy some elastic thread. And I have to go kind of look up some more tutorials and figure out what my strategy is going to be, but I do plan on putting some elastic in the neckline to hopefully cinch it in a little bit more. I don't think it needs to be anything super dramatic, but I would like it if, you know, this became, you know, a little bit more compact. And I think that would solve my problems. If you have any tutorials that you have used before that you really liked, please let me know in the comments. Something I am finding, so this is a folded over neckband. A lot of the tutorials I have found so far have you sewing the elastic thread like actually in and out of the fabric. I'm curious if anyone has any tutorials for inserting thread within that like folded over casing. I would really like it. You know, like, is it just literally as simple as taking a piece of thread and like kind of feeding it through like you would an elastic in sewing? Maybe. That's probably what I'm gonna try out, but if you have any tutorials or tips about inserting elastic into a folded over collar, please let me know, because I'm probably gonna do that soon. But yes, just working away on the body. At this point, the pattern, it doesn't really give you a specific measurement. It just says knit until your desired body length. So we will see. I knit a couple inches and then I try it on. It is kind of an oversized sweater, so I'll probably make it a little bit longer than some of my other sweaters. And yeah, and then I'll be on to the sleeves. The sleeves, there's two sleeve options. There's kind of like a standard tapered sleeve and then a big balloon sleeve. I'm gonna do the balloon sleeve because, again, I feel like with the color, like with it being white and having the mohair on there, it just like kind of looks like a cloud. And so I just want like a big puffy sleeve to go with it. And yes, I love it. and I don't want it to go into my unfinished whips pile, so I'm gonna keep working on it. Again, I feel like I could finish one of my current knitting projects if I like really prioritize it. I feel like they're both, you know, they're both like maybe a little over halfway done. We'll see. Again, I don't want to put pressure on myself to finish anything like, you know, by next episode, I'm going to have this done. I don't want to do that. I just want to knit what I feel like knitting on a given day. And, you know, maybe one of these will be done next month. Maybe they won't. We'll see. All right. I think that's all I have to say about this sweater. I'll show it to you one more time because it's so pretty. All right. And that is it for my knitting works in progress. And then, as I said earlier, I have one sewing work in progress. So, like I've mentioned, my Magnolia dress I sewed for my friend's wedding, and I actually have another wedding this coming Saturday, and I wanted to make a second dress to wear to that wedding. So I have started that the last week or two. I am making the, I believe it's pronounced Reglisse. I don't know what that means or what that translates to, but this is another pattern by Deer and Doe. It has two different views. The first one has some shearing at the waist and then a bow in the front. And then the second one has an elasticated waist and buttons down the front. I am making the second view. The first one, it looks really cute on people. It's a little too Sailor Moon for me, if I'm being honest, like with the bow in front, which I think for a lot of people would be a major plus. But I like simple things, and having a big bow on the front of my dress is just not my style. So I'm doing the button version. And yes, over the last like week or two, I, you know, printed out my pattern. This was another case where I bought a bunch of patterns from Deer and Doe, like paper physical patterns from Deer and Doe, and then I realized that the sizing on their pre-printed patterns is limited, and that if you want to get their extended sizes, you have to actually go purchase the PDF. So that's why I have this booklet, but I had to go buy the PDF pattern, print it out, assemble it, trace and cut out all my pieces. So I did all of that, and then I cut out all of my fabric, which, if I'm being honest, that I think is like the most tedious part of sewing. Like the preparation to sew is the part that takes the longest. Actually sewing up a dress is pretty quick and usually painless. But yeah, it's the like cutting, pattern assembly, pinning, all of the like not sewing parts of sewing is what takes the longest. So I cut out all my fabric. It felt like it took a very long time, but now that I'm actually sewing the dress, I think it's going by very quickly. So this is actually my plan this afternoon because, like I said, I have to finish this by Saturday. Otherwise, I'll be going to the wedding naked. And that is not a good look. I had to pause for a second. I think I've mentioned this before. I always cut it out, but they vacuum the hallway of my apartment every Sunday morning. And so I feel like every time I record a video, I have to take a break while they vacuum. It never takes very long, but it's something that I like forget about every time I record. Anyways, I don't have like much to show in regards to this dress. It's like basically a big pile of fabric. It doesn't look like anything, but these are all my fabric pieces. I have started sewing a few things. Let me see if I can dig through here and find it. So like this is one of the front pieces. I sewed the darts, did some stay stitching around the front. There's a little bit of a ruffle at the shoulder. What else have I done? I'm dropping pieces everywhere. Where's the back? Oh, this is the other front piece where I've actually like put the ruffle in. Making ruffles on dresses is not, I mean, that looks okay. I feel like whenever I do ruffles, they look a bit uneven. I haven't quite cracked that yet, but no one's looking that closely, I'm sure. And then I also sewed, yes, the back has a seam kind of down the back. And yes, the rest of this is just a pile of fabric and interfacing, so there's not that much to show. The fabric I am using is, I'll just hold up my one front piece. It's blowing out a little bit. Maybe if I hold it back a bit better. It's this like just gorgeous dark green. I also purchased this from Pretty Mercerie. Again, I just love their fabric selection. It is a viscose, so it's quite drapey, and yes, I just think this is one of my favorite colors. It's, you know, there are a few non-neutral colors that I really, really like. Dark green is definitely one of them. You can maybe see I have some dark green yarns. This one's a little bit more of a forest green, but this is like that like spruce forest, like blue toned green. I love it. Anyways, my fabric's really wrinkly. It looks like a bit of a mess at this point, but rest assured, I think that will come together pretty quickly. I did not make a muslin for this dress, which is a bit of a risky move. For those of you that do not do any sort of garment sewing, a muslin is basically like a practice round out of some cheaper fabric. It's kind of like the equivalent of swatching and knitting. You know, you make a practice dress, or like, you know, I sometimes don't do the full dress, but I will do the bodice because that's the part that has to fit a little bit better. I didn't do that this time, which I think this is the first time I've ever not made a muslin. I have made several deer and doe patterns at this point, so I felt pretty confident that it would fit in the bust, which I think is often the spot that I have to make some adjustments. And then I've made enough like dresses and shirts in general to know that, you know, from armpit to the narrowest part of my waist is about 7.5 inches. And so I did elongate the bodice of this dress to accommodate that length. And then the other reason I didn't make a muslin for this dress specifically is because it does have an elastic in the waist. I didn't think it had to, you know, it's not super form-fitting, or like, you know, the bodice as it stands is not super form-fitting because what like cinches it in is an elastic. And so I don't think, you know, if it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller than needed or than, you know, intended, like that elastic will still like cinch it in and make it look good. I could, you know, eat my words next month when I talk about how this dress turned out, but I'm pretty hopeful that, you know, because of that elastic, it's a big full skirt. And so, you know, there are things about this particular pattern that I think are maybe a little more forgiving. So I didn't make a muslin. I guess we will find out if that was a good decision or not. It definitely wasn't a good decision, but maybe it will be an okay decision that turns out all right. We'll see. Yes, more to come on that one. And that is it for all of my works in progress. I thought I would take a few minutes and talk about my plans for the upcoming month. So for June, knitting wise, like I've said, I plan to continue working on my half and half triangles wrap and my Fisherquine sweater. I don't know if I will finish either of those this month. I think if I split my knitting time evenly between the two, then they won't get finished. But if I like, you know, lean more towards working on one over the other, I might be able to finish it by the end of the month. We'll see. Again, I'm not putting pressure on myself to try and finish things by a certain date. I'm just gonna work on what I feel like working on. And if I happen to finish one of them this month, great. I have been giving some thought to what I want to work on next. I think, you know, like I said, 2 knitting projects is a good number for me. And so when I finish one of those, I will start something new, or what I think I will actually do is pick up an old work in progress. Yes, I want to balance starting new things, but then also picking up old projects and finishing up old projects. And my current 2 knitting projects were fresh cast-ons when I started them, or when I like picked them up this time. So I feel like I need to work on a languishing whip next and like pull one of those into rotation. I am thinking I will probably work on, if you go back several episodes at this point, I had started a pair of socks for my mom for Mother's Day, which I didn't finish, and Mother's Day is long gone. So they are now a Christmas present for my mom. And I would like to get them done and off my plate sooner rather than later. I don't like deadline knitting, and so I just like want to have them done and finished and not, you know, get to December and be frantically knitting and worrying about finishing them. So I think I might pull those back into rotation as my next project for knitting. So pair of socks is not like the most exciting thing, at least for me. I am not much of a sock knitter anymore. I don't know, I would rather be knitting sweaters, but my mom really loves hand-knit socks, so I will continue to make them for her. So that'll probably be my next knitting project if I finish something this month. And then for sewing, I do plan on finishing that Reglisse dress. Again, that one is on a bit of a deadline. I need to finish it by Saturday. I don't think that will be a problem. I might have to spend a lot of time sewing this week, but I will finish that up. And then I think when that is done, I'm gonna loop back to, you might remember if you've been watching that I started a Lala Fancy quilt by Southern Charm Quilts, and I kind of put that on hold to sew up these wedding dresses. And now that that will be finished, I really want to get back to that quilt and work on that quilt top. The other thing I might sew this month, I have decided to, up to this point in my garment sewing journey, I've only sewn certain patterns one time. I really want to get in the habit of sewing several versions of each pattern. I think, you know, that like really helps you work on fit. And, you know, if you find a pattern you really like, you know, I'm the type of person that if I like, even when I'm shopping, if I find a shirt that I really like, I'll buy like 5 different colors of it. I would like to start doing that more with sewing. So the Reglisse dress, the one that I'm working on right now, I have 2 other fabrics I really want to sew it up out of. So I might start on that as well. Again, I don't want to get too many things going at the same time because I get really overwhelmed by having too many projects on the go. So yeah, I might focus on the quilt for a little bit and then maybe get back to those 2 other versions of the Reglisse dress, or, you know, start those. So yeah, those are my plans for the month of June. If you've made it this far, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a life update, what we have been up to this month, this past month. May was half eventful, half not. So It must have been like a day or two after I filmed my last monthly makes episode, I tested positive for COVID. So it finally got me. This is my first time getting COVID. I had made it, what was that, over 2 years, and I hadn't gotten COVID. I am vaccinated, so that helps, but yes, I got COVID. And I tested positive for about 2 weeks. I was testing like every 5 days or so, and it just like really hung around. And I never got super sick. It was just kind of like having a cold. I know other people definitely have more intense experiences than I did, but I am very fortunate to have a job where I can work from home if necessary. So for about 2 weeks, I was working from home, and I did work the whole time. I wasn't sick enough where I felt like I needed to take time off. And then, yeah, I pretty much quarantined at home for 2 weeks while I was testing positive. I ended up missing one of my friends. My friend that got married last weekend had her bachelorette party, and I had to miss it because I had COVID, which was very sad. I hate missing out on things, so. But such is life, I guess. So that happened. And then, yeah, the second half of May, I had a bridal shower that I went to. I had that wedding. And then, yeah, this last weekend, which I guess technically is June. Wait, I missed Memorial Day. What did we do on Memorial Day? I think Dan and I we grilled out with some of our friends. That's what we did. We did that. I managed to get to the Memorial Union Terrace over the last couple weeks, which I'll talk about that for a moment. If you are ever in Madison, if you're not from here and you ever come here for whatever reason, you should definitely check out the Memorial Union Terrace. It is, I think, one of the prides of this city, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite spots. It is a university building. So yeah, it's the Memorial Union. I guess most universities have a student union. So this is, UW-Madison actually has 2 student unions. So this is the older one, in case that causes any confusion. But so Memorial Union Terrace, and it is this beautiful old building, and it is built right on the lake, and it's got this amazing outdoor patio. I actually took a little video, so I'll insert that at the end. But you know, you can get really good food there. They actually have pretty decent food there. And then, you know, pictures of beer, and it's right on the lake, and it's just a really beautiful spot. They do live music there, and yeah, I think it's pretty unique. I was talking to one of our friends about it, and he was saying, you know, the university he went to did not have anything like that, and that he thought that it was a pretty unique thing to have such a beautiful union at the university. You know, being built on the lake is something really special. So I definitely recommend, if you're ever here in the summer months, to go check out the Memorial Union Terrace. Anyways, that is my hype up for the city of Madison. There's a lot of other great things in Madison, but that one is one of my personal favorites. And yeah, looking ahead, our summer, Dan and I, our summer is quite busy. I think we have something on our social calendar every weekend in June and July. So that does cut into my knitting time and my sewing time, but you know, it's good to get out and do fun things. So yeah, like I said, every weekend in June, we've got something on the calendar. I'll talk about that next month. But yes, that is what has been going on with me. So thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, remember to please like and subscribe. to this channel. Leave a comment if, you know, something really struck a chord with you and you want to make some conversation about it. And I will plan on recording a finished object video for my Reglisse dress. That'll probably come out in about 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks after that, I will do my June monthly makes. So you can expect to hear from me in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I will chat with you all soon. Bye, everyone.